Oh no. Hello and welcome back. I'm here again to explain and to entertain. This week I want to talk about the myths and the facts about ADHD and what us ADHD people really want you to know. So without any further ado, let's get into today's video. Excuse me, my name is Karen and I obviously need to speak to the manager because she can't have ADHD because she's not hyper and ADHD means hyper, so. Now, this one always causes a lot of confusion because since 2013, they have combined the two all under the same name of ADHD with 3 subcategories. First one being attention deficit, the second one being hyperactivity, and the third one being the combined type. Now, I myself am referred to as ADHD inattentive type, which doesn't mean that I don't have ADHD because I'm not super hyper all the time or that I have problems sitting still. I love sitting still. If you park me on a couch, I will happily not do anything for hours. So to clear up the confusion, whenever I talk about ADHD, I also mean what you would refer to as ADD. Same thing, okay? Next! ADHD is just that you have trouble focusing. It's nothing else. Go ahead, put me on social media. I don't care. Now, it is partially called attention deficit disorder, yes, but it's not so much attention deficit rather than attention regulation, because we can focus on some things really well, and we actually also have a thing called hyperfocus, but it doesn't just affect our focus. It affects many things in our lives, so it's not just a problem of focus. Which brings me to the next one. So, next! ADHD is not a medical condition, okay? Yeah, I'm on the phone to the cops right now. Yeah. It actually is. Fact is, you can't diagnose someone just based on a brain scan, but many studies have shown that there is a marginal difference between an ADHD brain and a neurotypical brain. Neurotypical meaning someone that doesn't have or isn't diagnosed with any mental disorder. ADHD brains have a constant dopamine deficiency, and dopamine is the stuff that makes you motivated, interested, happy in general. Next to the dopamine deficiency, also our frontal lobe is underdeveloped usually. Now, the frontal lobe is the part that actually regulates things like memory, attention, impulse control, and motivation. It's not great, right? So dopamine, which we just learned that we are lacking, is also kind of a little messenger that travels between the different parts of the brain, making them work together. And because we lack dopamine, the different parts in our brains don't communicate as well between each other. It's kind of like a miscommunication between two people in normal life. And therefore, we suffer from executive dysfunction, which means that our intentions often don't turn into actions, meaning we often don't finish projects or drop out of courses early. And even worse, we often are laying on the couch for hours and all we're thinking about is getting up, but we're not actually getting up. So yes, ADHD is very much a real medical condition. Next! Yeah, Mr. Police Officer, I feel like everybody here knows that it's just the result of bad parenting. Like, all they need is good discipline. Okay, so now that we have just learned that it is an official, real medical condition, discipline is often not the answer at all. Let's give this a bit more context, right? Imagine a lovely man named Norman. Norman, sadly, was born with just 3 fingers. Bless him, right? Now, let me ask you a question. What is more discipline gonna do for Norman? And did his parents cut off his fingers? Would you yell at 3-fingered Norman that he should just try harder to play the flute? No! I mean, I hope not. Just sit on that for a bit. I promise we will get back to poor old Norman a few times during this video. Next! Yeah, but they can, definitely outgrow it, right? Mr. Police Officer, they can outgrow it, right? I used to have a very dangerous hospital visit inducing allergy for cow's milk. And luckily, when I was around 12, I outgrew this. Great. Unfortunately though, this is not the case with ADHD, because just as Norman isn't getting his fingers back, we don't magically get a shiny new brain. Well, anyway, it's like just a learning disability, right? During school, it is often viewed as a learning disability, such as dyslexia. This kind of makes sense because during school, if the kid's not doing well, then obviously it has a learning disability. But ADHD is not just a learning disability. Like we just learned, it affects our memory. Lots of ADHDers have a skewed sense of time. We either have now or not now, which means that not now, as in the future, is just kind of a invisible blur. When it is now, and all of a sudden it's next Friday when you had a paper due, then that is now, but you didn't see that now coming. So you were like, oh, shit. But the problem is that, unlike with Norman and his 3 missing fingers, you can't see our disability. And often, because no one sees it, we don't actually see or notice it about ourselves. We, just like you, think that we are normal people and that we're just not trying hard enough, even though we have no clue what trying harder would look like. Okay, so let's imagine that our dear friend Norman, with his 3 fingers, didn't know he was missing 3 fingers. I know this sounds ridiculous, but bear with me. Let's say Norman doesn't know, and he just thinks he's a bloody idiot for not knowing how to play the flute, even though Norman is super musically talented. He also can't do arts and crafts, even though he's super creative. And in sports, he can't throw a ball, even though he loves playing sports. And so, his whole life, poor dear Norman tries to do just as the others do. When it comes to throwing that ball, he observes and observes them, how people are holding it, how they're throwing it, and he tries to mimic everything. And sometimes he gets close. It goes kind of okay because he's trying so hard. So obviously people around him go, see, if only you try harder, you will do better. But a lot of the times he will drop the ball, more often than not. And then people around him are disappointed in him for not giving it his best and not trying hard enough. So obviously our poor Norman starts believing he's a stupid bloody fucking idiot as well. And the most Norman does manage to do is hold the ball without dropping it, but actually throwing it acquires those fingers that it doesn't have. And this is what it feels like to us. We do manage to hold the ball, which to me was pretending that I'm okay, and every now and then I had a good grade which would up my average, so I managed to stay in school, but just managing was exhausting, let alone throwing the ball and actually doing the homework, getting good grades, all that malarkey. So maybe it's time for a different approach. I remember adults in charge always throwing these inspirational quotes at me, looking at me like, ha! You didn't know that, did you? You are very welcome for this big gift I have just given you. I feel normal therapy is usually realizing things through talking about it, which obviously is always good. But because ADHD is often misdiagnosed as depression, for me, just talking about it didn't really help, because what I was looking for is, I know I'm doing all these things, but I don't know why, and I need some kind of help to get there. But all I got were inspirational quotes and, oh, that must be hard. And how are you feeling about that? Yes, I know how I'm feeling about it, but how are we going to fix it? Often we don't know what exactly we are feeling, or we can't put it into words, which is a super weird twilight zone because you are feeling all the feelings. We tend to be super self-conscious almost all the time. We feel like we know ourselves so extremely well, but there are also other things that I just can't seem to explain. People being frustrated with us keep pushing us to explain, which makes sense because they want to understand us. But often when we can't give them a concrete answer, that's not an answer that's satisfying enough for them. Well, do you think that this state is satisfying for us? No! Heck no! Usually, the things you're telling us we're doing wrong, we already know that. We know exactly what we're doing wrong, and usually, we know exactly what could be done about it. Chances are that we are already constantly thinking about doing those things, but still, we don't do them, which makes us appear lazy. And you love telling us how lazy we are. Look, most of us have a certain teacher that stayed in our memory forever, right? I do anyway. Now I want you to think about what is the actual reason that you still think so fondly about them and that they will probably be in your memory forever. Probably because they made you feel understood. They didn't judge you. They believed in you, and through this, just for a few seconds, could make things seem a little less complicated, right? Okay, so what's stopping you from being that teacher in your own life? I feel like adults in charge should really look at what they felt like as a teenager. I mean, aside from ADHD, being a teenager is really hard. Don't you remember that? If you're preaching to us, all we will see is someone that's already there with their success and a stable life, which is far too away for us to be able to picture it. I did go to the school therapist for a bit, but all he told me was something about lavender oil, and I think we really should look at what do kids actually need instead of punishing them for what they are doing wrong. The miscommunication in our brains is the reason that we are not living up to our potential, but no one knows about it. So obviously all we get all the time is to talk about discipline. Go in assuming that they already know what they're doing wrong. They just don't know how to break a cycle. Tell them that that's okay and that you will be there with them along the way to help them figure it out together. Encourage them. Focus on their strengths. Show them that you believe in them so that they start to believe in themselves again. And I know you must be thinking, okay, cool, but what happened to Norman? Well, kids, let me tell you, high school was hard for Norman, but he did get medical attention, which resulted in a prosthesis of a hand. And even though Norman knew he would never actually have a normal hand of flesh and blood, this prosthesis helped him so much in his daily life, which made Norman believe in himself again. And Norman is nowadays very happy. Yay, Norman! Let's give ADHD people, teenagers or adults, the same opportunities that Norman had, and give us our mental prosthesis, whether that is through ADHD focused therapy or medication, or in my case, a combination of those things. Because a lot of the times, even if we come to terms with our own disability, the rest of the world is still shouting at us to be more disciplined. And that is why I really hope that this video can help some people who are having a hard time right now, whether that is because you're struggling with your own ADHD or because you're struggling to understand a person with ADHD. Even if this person is really frustrating you, they probably don't do it on purpose. So show this to your friends or family or teachers to maybe give them a bit more knowledge about who you really are and how your brain may work differently, and that that's okay. And that was my TED Talk. Thank you. That concludes it, guys. There's a lot that's going to be happening on this channel and I am loving it. So I hope you're with me for the ride and I'll see you next week. Bye. Yeah, I'm calling the manager right now. Right now. Yeah, but yeah. Ugh.